because we are going to look at mastering motivation. So we all want to be motivated ourselves, and we also want to motivate others. So that's what this session will be about this morning. It's about the driving force behind individual and team performance. So as a leader, it's really important that you understand intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and both are crucial for unlocking potential, increasing engagement, and having that sustained high performance within your team and within your organization. And this sort of interactive session today will help you assess, balance, and optimize both your own motivation and the motivation of others. And it will give you sort of strategies to try and help motivate people around you. So this content is really designed to help you understand what truly motivates you and your teams, and how to harness that motivation to drive higher engagement, performance, and job satisfaction. So as leaders, it's important that we have our ability to inspire others, to energize others, and to sustain that motivation within our teams for the long term. And that will help with what we're trying to achieve. So in this session today, what we'll do is we'll cover intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how they impact your leadership and team dynamics. We will look at practical tools you can use to influence motivation of yourself and your organization, and we'll look at strategies to balance both in terms of the individual and your team performance. So there are the learning outcomes of today. I have a question for you. I know this is euros. What do you think that 20 euros is worth? And, some might say not very much. But some might say, look, it's a meal for a loved one. Some might say it's fuel to keep them motivated and keep them warm. Some might say it is a book that would change the course of your life. And that 20 euros would mean something different to every single one of you and every single one of your team. So the reality is it's actually not worth anything. It's just a piece of paper. And it's what we give value to that will actually bring it into meaning something for us and for the people who maybe have that money and attach something to it. And I suppose we need to think about motivation in the same way. What motivates one person may not motivate another person. That's what we'll be uncovering today. How to identify, understand, and leverage different motivations and different motivational drivers to help those high performance teams. So leadership is really more than just setting goals, driving performance metrics. It's about understanding people and what fuels their commitment, their effort, and their resilience. So without strong, motivated teams can become really disengaged quite quickly. And whenever we do have disengaged teams, that leads to high burnout and high staff turnover, and none of us want that. It leads to employees who lack motivation and are more likely to leave. Leads to lower productivity because whenever people aren't motivated, performance suffers. It leads to lack of innovation because people need to be inspired to think creatively and solve problems effectively. And it means there's disengagement within our teams. So motivation really influences our culture, collaboration, the overall morale within our teams. So you guys, you will understand that motivation, a one-size-fits-all approach, it doesn't really work in terms of motivation because people are motivated by different things. Some are motivated by personal fulfillment. Some are motivated by mastering their skills. And those would be intrinsic and purpose as well, which is intrinsic motivation, while others respond better to rewards, recognition, and incentives, which would be extrinsic motivation. So let's watch a video which will just explain what both types of motivation are, both intrinsic and extrinsic.
Whether we're working, playing sports, or anything else that requires focus and effort, motivation has a huge impact on how well we perform. When it comes to motivation, there are two main types: intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation usually comes in the form of incentives that are provided externally by other people. In a workplace setting, these can be rewards, such as bonuses, extra holidays, or promotions, or punishments, such as criticisms, disciplinary actions, or being fired. In short, it's the classic carrot and stick approach. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is what drives each person from within, the individual values and preferences that make doing a particular task more meaningful. Decades of psychological research have shown that intrinsic motivation is strongly linked to increased engagement, performance, and overall happiness. By making people's intrinsic motivations visible, Attuned helps companies align their employees' goals and values with their own, creating a culture of purpose and ultimately making work more meaningful.
So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what intrinsic and extrinsic motivation is. And as leaders, it's important that we try to balance both motivators and create that environment where your teams can find meaningful fulfillment in their work, and people stay engaged, productive, and committed, and they feel recognised and rewarded for their contributions. So what I'd like us to do now is to think about ourselves. What motivates you? And I just want you to jot that down. There are spare pages in your booklet, but even if you just have, a notepad and pen, just write down what motivates you. Reflect on what drives you as a leader. And just think about that. Okay, so I'm going to just see if we can have a couple of shares. So Aled, would you mind sharing what motivates you? What's your greatest motivator?
I just made a note here. What motivates me more than anything, more than financial, really, is to ensure that everybody that works with me and for me has a decent standard of living. That everybody can work together, so there's continuation of work, continuation of contracts, and basically everybody can better themselves. Really, that's my biggest motivation.
Fantastic, Aled, and I love that. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. John, do you mind sharing about what you've just written down in terms of what are your greatest motivators?
I've put down what motivates me is satisfaction of a job well done. Kind of getting pushed to my limits, but not too far beyond my limits, because then I get stressed and don't perform, and I don't do a good job. So, kind of working at my limits and doing a good job.
Doing a good job. Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you. Sinead, what's your motivators?
Sorry, I had three things. Mine are quite similar to Aled. So results, company growth, and most important, personal development. But that's for me and the team.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Sinead. Mary, what's your greatest motivators?
It's probably quite similar to job satisfaction, and making sure that the work that my team's delivering is well received and people appreciate it. So that, and also personal development, I think that's important for me at the minute as well.
Brilliant, Mary. Thank you for sharing. And Jill, we'll come to you next.
I'm probably a mixture of everybody's as well. Challenge. I like to work towards something that is maybe challenging and slightly different to what I'm used to. Helping others is one, and maybe selfishly a bit of recognition, a bit of positive feedback on a job well done is always a good motivator.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose mine is making that positive impact and that positive difference to those who are in the programme. That really what drives me to feel like you are making a difference. And I think a lot of what we described there was intrinsic motivation, internal. There was a little bit of extrinsic as well there in terms of recognition and that kind of thing. And, it's really good to reflect on this, because what you will find is whenever you are a leader, what you will find is that most often leaders lead others based on what motivates us. And what our drives are how we will really reflect in our leadership style. And whenever we understand what motivates us, that really is the first step in understanding and becoming a really, really effective leader. So we lead others based on what motivates us. So if you want your team to do well, then they will feel that, and you'll lead in that regard. If you're interested in personal development, you'll want others to develop around you. So it's really, really interesting. And then Jill, that recognition, you're probably really good at giving out recognition to people within your team as well. So it's really reflected in how we lead others. So I'm going to do a quick fire round, and you've already mentioned some of these already, so you will know the answers. So it's just a reflection exercise, and so I'll ask you these questions. And again, you've already mentioned a number of these whenever you were talking about what motivates you. So I want you to take a moment to think about what drives you most in your personal and professional life in terms of these. So do you feel the greatest sense of achievement when you master a new skill, overcome a challenge, or create something meaningful? So those are intrinsic motivators. Or do you feel more sense of achievement when you receive a promotion, a bonus, a reward, or public recognition? And those would be extrinsic motivators. And then what keeps you pushing forward even during tough times? So John, I was thinking of you in this question. Is it that strong sense of purpose, growth, passion for your work, which is intrinsic motivators, or then the desire for external success, financial gain, or competition, which is extrinsic motivation? And how do you measure success? So do you measure it by making personal fulfillment or learning experiences? So that's intrinsic. Or is it by hitting targets, earning rewards, and gaining external approval, which is extrinsic? And you'll see there people mentioned a bit of both, actually, achieving targets, company growth, that kind of thing, but also then personal development and growing. So you will see that, you'll have a bit of both whenever you're thinking about motivation, and that will be the same for your team. And I was going to get you to raise your hands if you feel more intrinsically motivated, or raise your hand if you feel more extrinsically, or maybe you want to raise both. But I think the feeling I got from this group is that most of you are more intrinsically motivated. So let's explore them a little bit deeper in terms of what they are, what they mean, and what this means for your team and your organizational culture and your leadership effectiveness and your team engagement. So we'll look at intrinsic first. So intrinsic motivation, it comes from within. So it's the internal drive to pursue goals, and it's really driven by passion, purpose, and personal growth and fulfillment. People who are intrinsically motivated enjoy their work because it aligns with their values and their aspirations. So examples of intrinsic motivation and leaders would be like maybe somebody who works on a scientific project, and they're working on the research because they love discovery, not because of the financial incentives. Maybe it's a CEO or a director who's passionate about making a difference in their industry or mentoring future leaders, or an entrepreneur who creates business because they love solving problems and it's not always just about the profit. So key intrinsic motivators are these: personal growth and mastering your role, a sense of purpose and impact, a passion for your work, enjoyment of challenge and creativity, and then the drive to learn and improve. So those are key intrinsic motivators. And then when we look at extrinsic motivation, this is really driven by external rewards, such as salary, promotion, awards, performance bonuses, those kind of things. And while these can be really powerful, if you only rely solely on these, sometimes it can lead to burnout or disengagement if employees really lack that deeper personal fulfillment. So examples of these would be, salary, a salesperson, executive hitting targets and earning commission, working long hours for maybe a promotion, or maybe somebody putting in that extra effort to win an award or public recognition. So key extrinsic motivators are really salary, bonuses, and promotions. They're recognition and rewards, job security, competition and external expectations, and social status and approval. So whenever we look at the neuroscience of motivation, this is really understanding how the brain responds to intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. This can help us make better decisions about how we can motivate our teams. So the key insights from neuroscience are that whenever we achieve a goal, if it's either intrinsic or extrinsic, then our brain releases dopamine, and that gives us a sense of pleasure, and it reinforces that behavior. So that, being told you're doing a good job and then recognizing those around you, that really reinforces that behavior, and they'll continue to do it. Intrinsic motivators activate long-term reward systems, so that keeps people engaged over the long term and feeling more fulfilled over the lifetime. Whereas extrinsic motivators provide that quick burst of motivation. So if you're wanting to get results and you've got a pressing deadline, you need to get things done, then that would be very effective. But if it is used alone, it can use effectiveness over time. So, if you give somebody a salary increase, it may not sustain engagement if the job isn't fulfilling. So you need to have a bit of both. And to have sustainable motivation, you need to balance intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So I'm going to now share with you a couple of different case studies of well-known leaders and their motivational styles. And, motivation is usually personal, deeply personal, and it's usually a mixture of internal and external motivators. But I'm going to share 3 well-known leaders with you, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, and you will know these people. So you will, but I'll just tell you a little bit more about, a bit of their background and their motivators. And what I want you to think about, who do you resonate most with whenever I'm going to share these 3 with you? So these are the 3 people. You'll recognize them on screen, I'm sure. So we'll start first with Elon Musk, right? So he's Tesla and SpaceX, and he's got intrinsic drive with extrinsic pressures. So what he says is, I think it is possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. So Elon Musk, he's often cited as a visionary leader whose work is deeply driven by passion, innovation. He's known for space exploration and trying to develop the future of humanity. However, his core motivation is intrinsic. He is under significant pressure to perform, given the nature of the companies that he works with. So his intrinsic motivators are these. He relentlessly pursues progression in electric vehicles, sustainable energy, and space exploration. And that shows that he really wants to solve global challenges. He's often stated that money is not his motivator, and his companies exist to make an impact, not just profit. And his passion for technology and human advancement pushes him towards, he works incredibly long hours and takes enormous risks. He's got extrinsic motivators and pressures. So investors expect him to perform. He's got a lot of stock performance pressures, media scrutiny, and that really impacts his decision-making. He needs to meet shareholder demands, financial goals, market pressures, and he also has the external expectation to continuously deliver those groundbreaking results in high pressure scenarios. And I suppose, you could say that he's both intrinsically and extrinsically motivated, and he really has to balance those both for his leadership. So that's the first person, that's Elon Musk. The second person then is Oprah Winfrey. So you'll all know Oprah, and she's really more purpose-driven leadership. So she says the biggest adventure you can take is to live the life of your dreams. So her journey is one of transformation, resilience, and purpose-driven success. So her primary motivator has always been intrinsic. It's about a deep-rooted desire to empower, educate, and uplift others. So in terms of intrinsic motivators, Oprah's media empire was not just built for financial success, it was fueled by passion of storytelling, educational, and personal development. She does a lot of work in philanthropy, social impact, and education. And she tries to really have that meaningful change for others in the work that she does. And she advocates personal growth, emotional intelligence, and living authentically. As well as that, though, she does have to meet corporate targets and ratings in her shows. And, throughout her media company, she has to ensure financial stability. And she's also recognized globally as a real global influencer. And she's got many awards, and she's had to play, that's played a role in her continued motivation. So that's Oprah. She's really more about purpose-driven leadership and creating that sustainable, lasting impact. And then we have the third person, who is Jeff Bezos, and he is Amazon. So he talks about managing and balancing profit with vision. And he says, if you only do things where you know the answer in advance, your company goes away. So he's all about taking risks. So he is about bold vision and the future of e-commerce, and he's driven by curiosity, risk-taking, and customer obsession. What is good for the customer? And his Amazon's grown into one of the largest corporations in the world. He has strong extrinsic motivators to maintain performance and scale that operation. So he's fueled by the fascination in technology and business strategy, long-term vision, his willingness to experiment, but really his extrinsic motivations and pressures are about profitability, shareholders' expectations, aggressive business growth, and strategies become his key drivers. He's known for, being really competitive with the salaries that he pays, performance-based incentives for employees, and the pressure to continuously outperform competitors and deliver financial results. So, he's cited as being one of the best leaders in terms of the companies that he runs, in terms of passion, innovation, and ensuring financial stability in market competitiveness. So those are the three people, and I just wanted to share a bit of an insight into all three. So what I want you to put in the chat box, or well, maybe no, there's not many of us, we'll just go around each of us. Which one do you resonate with and why? Now that you've sort of heard a little bit more about them. So we'll just ask Aled, which one of those three stands out for you? Or is it a mixture of all three?
I'd say none of them, to be honest with you. So it'd be a very, very small part of all three, as you say. I wouldn't say I was similar to any of them, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. And that's, I did try and pick three very extreme people because I was trying to sort of pick different elements and aspects that would be very, very different. John, is there any that you resonate with at all?
Yeah, I want to try and make the staff happy, try and have sort of longevity. We need to make profit. We need to develop new materials. So it's a little combination of everything, really, but not one individual.
There you go. And it's picking those different elements out of each to bring them together into the perfect recipe. John, what about you? Is there one that you resonate with most, or is it a mixture of all three?
I guess if I had to pick, I would pick Musk. He seems to be mostly intrinsic, but against that, he's got that the shareholders, the intrinsic behind him as well. So out of the three, it'd probably be Musk.
Sinead, what about you?
I think I'd be more towards Oprah, to be honest. The other guys are great and they work really hard, but sometimes I think some of these people can be a wee bit ruthless. It's no bad thing either, but I resonate a little bit more with Oprah.
Brilliant. And Mary, what about you?
I would probably say Oprah too. It was probably similar to what she had said. Yeah, I find my own probably be the softer side of things to try and motivate staff, rather than that being totally extrinsic.
Yeah, brilliant. And Jill, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the ladies and say Oprah. I wrote down the empower, educate, and uplift others, what you said about her. And I think that I can relate that to myself as well as other people in the team. So I think that's why I would go Oprah.
Very good. I think there's a bit of a split then. The guys who went with the girls who went with the girls. But look, there's no right answer here. It's really just getting us to think, what are key motivators that drive people? And what I'd like you to do now is just a little bit of a motivation mapping exercise. And what I would like you to do on a piece of paper is write down, intrinsic motivators. So what drives you from within? So just take a piece of paper and at one side write intrinsic motivators, and then at the other side write extrinsic motivators, and that's what external rewards push me forward. So intrinsic is what drives me from within, and then extrinsic is what external rewards push me forward. And I'm just going to give you a few moments. I'll give you about 5 minutes just to write down, and this is just personal to you, you don't have to share this, just what drives you. So for example, there's how it can look on your screen, and I can send you this motivational mapping exercise after today, and you will be able then just to write down. So for example, I'll give you a few examples just to kickstart. So solving complex problems, that would be intrinsic, so that comes from within. Earning performance bonuses, extrinsic. Look, I'm sure we all want to earn enough money and live the life that we want to live as well. So that's okay. Learning a new skill, intrinsic, getting a promotion. Look, extrinsic, helping people succeed, intrinsic. So there's different motivators, and I just want you to have a bit of self-reflection this morning and take sort of 5 minutes or so to think about, you know, what are your key motivators? Just give you another 1 minute and then we'll move on. Okay. So every individual is motivated by different factors, and as leaders, whenever we're looking at our teams, it's important that we know what drives us, but it's also important that we think about what drives our team, and that's crucial to optimizing performance. So there's 3 motivational styles. There's achievement driven, so that's people who are motivated by personal goals, challenges, and mastery, becoming the best at what you do. Then there's affiliation drive, which is more motivated by teamwork, relationships, and that collaboration. And then there's power drive, which is motivated by influence, recognition, and making that impact. And not one size fits all, and it requires adapting our approach to meet individual needs. And what you'll find is whenever it comes to motivation, there's a motivation spectrum. So people shift, and you will have shifted throughout your career from different motivation types. So because you're leaders and you're senior people within your organization, I'm not surprised that, you know, the majority of what you said earlier in our conversation was about intrinsic motivators. But what you'll find is that motivation dynamics change depending on a person's stage of their career, their experiences, and their role expectations. And it's important that we sort of understand, looking at our teams, you know, people might be transitioning between different sort of motivators, and they may approach the way they approach their job differently. So early career, people who enter or entry-level employees, what do you think they're most motivated by? Do you think they're more extrinsic or intrinsic? You can take yourselves off mute and let me know what you think, those early career people.
I would say extrinsic.
Yeah. People who are just out of college, maybe just out of school, what are they looking for? Money.
Money.
they all want a bit of money to buy what they want to buy, go out at the weekend, get themselves clothes, car. Maybe it's even, you know, saving for that first time mortgage, you know, starting a family, all of that. Money's very important. Extrinsic motivators are more important. Salary, job security, promotion, tangible rewards. Those things are more important for people who are in their early career, entry-level employees. They need structure, they need mentorship, They need performance-based incentives to stay engaged. So yeah. Then we look at mid-career, experienced professionals, middle management. What do you think their greatest motivators are? Any ideas?
Would it be both?
Yeah, a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah.
They really want a balance of both. They want intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So they will have that desire for recognition, career growth, meaningful work, and they will need development opportunities. They'll maybe want opportunities to develop into maybe more leadership roles, and they want a sense of purpose that they're actually making a difference in what they do every day. And then you guys, senior leaders, you are more intrinsically motivated, and that came out very clearly earlier. So it's more about that desire for impact, legacy, autonomy, mastery, being the best at what you do, making that impact, the need for freedom, responsibility, the ability to drive change. You guys are change makers in your organizations. And it's just important that we think about the different people we have in our teams. What is the makeup of your team? Do you have a lot of new entries into your company, into your team? And it's about thinking about, where are your team members in that spectrum and how can you support them and their motivational needs? So I want you to think about this. Where are your team members in the spectrum and how can you support them in their evolving motivational needs? So I'm just going to split you into a couple of breakout rooms and I want you to think about this. So just think about, the makeup of your team, and we'll just do 2 breakout rooms and we'll just take 5 minutes just to have a quick chat about this. I think it's just nice to have a think. Let me just make sure the time is right. Yeah, okay, perfect. So I'll open the rooms and you'll get a notification whenever there's a minute to come back, and I will join one of the rooms as well. So there we go. The rooms are now open, so you should be able to join your room. And it's really just thinking about your team, the makeup of your team, and the spectrum of people within it. I was on mute there. I'm talking away and I'm on mute. Okay, so yeah, so hopefully you had good conversations, and I'm just going to hear from a couple of you. So did you have any insights just from the other group that were there? So that would have been so we would have had Ala, Jill, and Mary. Did you have any insights in terms of where you're at with your teams?
I think I'll jump in here and you guys can keep me right. We were all quite similar in terms we had a real mixture of experience, and we nearly linked it to age as well, which is maybe not ideal, but in my specific business, we have trainees that have come in. So they've very little experience, they're learning, but they're also motivated. They're motivated to develop into the next stage of the job, but that's also
Yeah,
linked to their salary and their, the financial element. And so
yeah,
I feel that they're linked or motivated on both aspects, whereas maybe the more senior people within the business who are consultants, they maybe have come from other businesses where they have had maybe more responsibility or a more senior role. They're happy doing their job, they do it well, and
yeah,
but they're not necessarily needing to develop themselves as the
yeah,
maybe more younger, less experienced. So, and I think Alad and Mary were quite similar in that we were linking it to the younger people versus the more senior
yeah.
people.
And that's often the way it can be. You may have others, that there is discrepancies to that rule, but generally that's the case. You may have people who've been there a long time and they don't want to move up. They're happy. They're just there and they're, whatever. But then usually, it does become more intrinsic for them and it's not. John had a different scenario because, yeah, John, your team were quite established and long term and have been with the company for a long time. So you maybe didn't have that issue of maybe having the newer people in who maybe did want the increased promotions and so on. John, do you want to add anything else, or are you happy enough with that synopsis?
Yeah, no, that sums it up. Yeah, been here
Yeah,
quite a long
perfect.
time. So
Brilliant.
largely
Well, I'm going to
intrinsic.
share this screen again. There we go. Let's try to get it to the right slide. I think this is us now. Perfect. So, I suppose we had that discussion as well within our group. Do we know what really motivates the people? We can assume. And if you don't, I suppose it's important then you can think about asking the right questions to uncover what truly drives your team members. So let me just change this display. There we go. And I suppose practical ways to identify is if you think about, you can ask them things like, what part of your job excites you most? Is there anything that keeps you engaged or energized at work? And you can ask something like, is there one thing that would make your job more fulfilling? So things like that are maybe ways that you could approach that to try and find out what does motivate them. So what part of your job excites you most? What keeps you engaged at work? When do you feel energized? Is there one thing we could do to make your job more fulfilling? And that will sort of help you to understand. Another way is just to observe behaviors and reactions. So when are they more excited? Is it about new challenges, new projects? That's more intrinsic. Do they respond better to performance bonuses or external recognition? How do they react if someone else is getting a different or a better reward than them? That's really interesting. How do people react if someone else is perceived to be getting a different reward or benefit to them? So I'm going to share with you a video now. I really love this video and it sort of makes you think about that. So let me just play this for you.
So a final experiment that I want to mention to you is our fairness study. And so this became a very famous study, and there's now many more, because after we did this about 10 years ago, it became very well known. And we did that originally with capuchin monkeys, and I'm going to show you the first experiment that we did. It has now been done with dogs, and with birds, and with chimpanzees. But with Sarah Brosnan, we started out with capuchin monkeys. So what we did is we put two capuchin monkeys side by side. Again, these animals, they live in a group. They know each other. We take them out of the group, put them in a test chamber. And there's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber, for the task, the two monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now, if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, that's a far better food, then you create inequity between them. So that's the experiment we did. Recently, we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically the Wall Street protest that you see here.
Okay, so that video is good because it's sort of, you know, if people perceive that you're treating them differently, they can have very different reactions, and sometimes it can just be perceived that somebody's getting more or different treatment than somebody else, and you know, they can throw the toys out of the pram, like that monkey did. I wasn't very happy that she wasn't getting the grapes, she was getting the cucumber. So people can have that reaction, and it may be internal and you may not see it on the outside, but you know, that monkey was very showing their frustration. So whenever, you know, you're thinking about motivation, it's important to think about, you know, team members, how they perceive the treatment and rewards of other staff. And, you know, motivation fluctuates. So, and it can change over time. It can change with what's going on in people's home lives, that kind of thing. So it's important to have regular one-to-ones and check in and keep track. So you will know then with your team, you know, what is motivating and what are their key drivers. And, you know, it may be that you have to think about what strategies do you have in your organization to uncover what really motivates your team. And one thing that you can do is you can look at this, and I can send you this after, actually, that's what I'll do, I'll put it in the portal. You can sort of think about, you know, if you do have big teams, you can think about, like, take the people in your team and think about what are their intrinsic motivators, what are their extrinsic motivators, what keeps them engaged, what demotivates them. So it could be for somebody who's a project manager, they love problem solving, that's an intrinsic motivator. Their extrinsic motivator is that they want recognition, so they want recognition for that. What keeps them motivated or challenged or engaged? They love challenging tasks. What demotivates them? It could be that they don't like micromanaging or being micromanaged. So that's an example. You could have somebody maybe who is like in sales, and their passion is really intrinsic for client success. Extrinsic motivators, maybe they want to meet their bonus or they want to meet their targets. What keeps them engaged? It could be a competitive environment. And what demotivates them could be lack of incentives, if you're, you know, that kind of thing. So if you think about, you know, your team and who you manage, you may want to then, you know, take some time over the next week or so, just to think about, you know, what are my team members' intrinsic motivators? What are their intrinsic motivators? What keeps them engaged? What demotivates them? And if you don't know, then maybe think about having some of those conversations about, you know, when do they feel, you know, most engaged, energized about their work, or those kind of things. And that might bring up conversations to help you understand the team and what they need for improvement, and what really enhances the motivation within your team. And then it's about, can you make any changes to enhance the motivation within your team? So, you know, are there any conversations that you could have to unlock motivation? Now that we understand more of the drivers, you can explore then the balance that you have for intrinsic and extrinsic motivators for optimal performance. And there is benefits and limitations of both. So I'm just going to go through those with you, just so we have a bit of information. So the key benefits of intrinsic motivation are these. It encourages innovation and creativity. So people work harder on ideas that they care about. It increases resilience. So employees push through challenges because they're personally invested whenever they're intrinsically motivated. It fosters autonomy. So employees feel that sense of ownership over their own work whenever they're intrinsically motivated. And it creates sustainable performance. So passion, purpose, and mastery keeps employees engaged for the long term. So I suppose the key takeaway with this, the best leaders cultivate passion and purpose with their teams. They don't just offer those rewards, they have passion and purpose with their teams, and that then means that there's long term. In terms of then extrinsic motivators, these can boost short-term performance, but if they are used over the long term, they can use their effectiveness. So extrinsic are things like salaries, increases, bonuses, promotions, and perks. And they can be effective, but usually only in the short term. But the key benefits are that they do provide quick performance boosts. So if you need to get, a target met, or if there's a project deadline and people are maybe working longer hours, if you give them a bonus or, a bit of an incentive, that will mean that you'll get immediate action, you'll get things done. It reinforces specific behaviors. So if you reward certain behaviors, it can shape culture. So if you have, maybe some kind of incentive for people who show the values in the company, that then will continue to help them display that. It also attracts top talent. Sometimes you need to pay a bit more to attract those key skill areas into the business. And I suppose we were talking about that with John as well, maybe the difficulty in getting the right people in construction, because maybe there's not enough to go around in terms of getting people into the company. So if you do have, I suppose the question I have for you is, what do you think the problems are if you solely focus on extrinsic motivation? And I suppose I'll just give you the answers. So it really creates dependency. If employees constantly inspect incentives, then they lose motivation whenever they're removed. Performance drops after the reward disappears. So if motivation is only external, the behaviour won't sustain. It'll only be short term. And it can drive unhealthy competition or unethical behaviour in some instances. So if people are really chasing rewards, they may cut corners. And we don't want that. We want things to be done right in the right way. So there was an example, a famous example you've maybe heard of, the Wells Fargo scandal, where employees were given aggressive sales quotas and high financial incentives. And that led to really unethical behaviour, and it included like fraudulent accounts and all sorts of things going on. So extrinsic motivators should only be used strategically, not as the sole driver. And if organisations do rely more on extrinsic motivation, then there could be diminished intrinsic drive. So employees will work hard for the reward, but not for personal fulfilment. It will decrease creativity and problem solving because people only want to work for their bonuses, and they won't be motivated or innovated beyond their job description. And we really don't want that either. And it can lead to burnout. Constant high stakes rewards can lead to stress, exhaustion, and loss of engagement. So there was this pay for performance trap, where research showed that creative workers who are incentivized only by money actually produce lower quality work than those who are driven by passion. So it's important that, we do have intrinsic motivators in our work, and extrinsic are important, but we need both to drive engagement and results. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this. Google had a policy where they, and it's cited as, I suppose, one of the best examples of intrinsic motivators. So Google had a policy called Google's 20% time. And really what it was, it allowed employees to spend up to 20% of their time working on projects that they were passionate about. So this was outside their normal job responsibilities, but projects that they were passionate about that would make a difference to Google. And really, whenever they were given this time, I suppose you could call it thinking time or time to be creative, innovative time, they came up with breakthrough innovations in Google, like Gmail, Google Maps. They were more engaged, creative, and productive, and it fostered that culture of ownership and autonomy. So really, whenever people do feel that they are coming up, or they have the responsibility to come up with new ideas, they have more purpose behind it. And if they feel that they're actually contributing and they're taking, they're involved, or they're making that difference, or they come up with an idea or a way to get the project finished, and they've got a purpose behind it, then it really does deliver incredible results. So these are just some questions to think about after today. What motivates your employees most? Where have you seen extrinsic motivators work well? Has your organization got a balance between both intrinsic and extrinsic motivators? And what happens when leaders are only driven by external rewards? Which none of you are, so that's all good. So yeah, when leaders themselves are motivated only by salary, status, or perk, it does create a toxic environment where decisions are short-term and self-serving. It means that employees will feel disconnected from the company values, and it stifles innovation. So there's companies that maybe have had that in the past, and it does lead to the downfall of these companies. So great leaders, I suppose, as key takeaway, are mission driven, not just financially motivated. And I suppose that's the key thing from today. Great leaders are mission driven, not financially motivated. And that's all of you. You're great in what you do. And I suppose the key thing is to balance both. And whenever you balance both intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators, that's where you get the magic formula. And, you know, whenever you do that, then you'll be seen as authentic. So whenever you align your work purpose, you can help employees reinforce their role and buy into the bigger picture of the company. And I suppose it's important then that, you know, whenever you are thinking about this, you know, you do think about how you can align your mission with your vision. So, yeah, so communicate, use, and empower. I suppose that's one way to really talk about extrinsic and intrinsic motivators. So during your team meetings, I would just say, look, regularly connect with, you know, the people that you're managing and ensure that their tasks that they're doing, show them that they are making an impact, and it does actually make an impact to the company and the company purpose. And when people feel that they're truly making a contribution, then they will be more intrinsically motivated. And then only use extrinsic motivators and rewards wisely, and make sure that they're meaningful and they reinforce meaningful behaviours. So reward, tie, and use. So whenever you reward behaviours, not just outcomes, and that encourages innovation, resilience, and not just sales numbers. And then tie your rewards to your values. So ensure incentives that you do use align with your company culture and goals. And then use non-monetary incentives such as recognition, career growth, and opportunities to provide that additional responsibility. And that will really help. So I suppose another question just to take away from today is, do you have an award system that acknowledges certain behaviours within your company? I'm not sure if you do or if any of you do, but it's something just to think about. Do you have any, you know, reward systems that acknowledge particular behaviours? And then foster autonomy and mastery. So encourage self-driven learning and development. And that there does help people to be more intrinsically motivated within your company. And here's just some tips to take away. Give employees freedom to experiment, provide opportunities for professional development, and encourage, you know, self-driven goals. So that means that you're taking ownership of your development and the people around you. And give team members the control over their projects and encourage self-directed learning, and that helps with intrinsic motivation as well. And recognize effort, not just the results, and you celebrate progress, and that really helps everyone move in the right direction. So acknowledge small wins, make feedback personal, and celebrate the learning moments. And yeah, one thing you could do is implement weekly shout outs or recognize wins during team meetings. So if somebody is doing something great, a quick thank you, pat on the back, a shout out to them personally or in front of maybe other team members can help. And encourage self-reflection. So help team members to think about their internal drivers. And that again will just help whenever you are trying to get your team to be motivated. So a few other things: ask powerful questions, encourage personal goal setting, and create that culture of learning. Okay. And I suppose just reflective questions from today. What truly drives you as a leader? Are you lining your goals with your internal motivators? And do you need to think about adjusting how you motivate your team? Or is everybody in your team extremely motivated? And that's the place that we all want to be. If we do have everyone in our team extremely motivated, then that means that we're all going in the right direction. So I suppose just an action plan from this session, you could think of one motivational strategy to implement. Schedule conversations with your team members to better understand them and their motivators, and then share your insights with your team to drive that high performance culture. And that really brings us to the end of today's session. So you can write down 3 takeaways and 1 actual leadership change that you're going to implement. And the key takeaways from the session are: balance is key, empower your employees, recognise and fuel motivation, and help to unlock their potential. So the final statement I'll leave you with today, just as we're coming to the end of the session, is motivation isn't just about what drives us, it's about how we inspire those around us to perform at our best. And that's really the key to, I suppose, getting our teams all to work in alignment and inspire everyone to move forward in the right way. And the best leaders just don't focus on results. They focus on inspiring the people around them and the people around them to love the journey that we're on. So that's us. We're finished for today. So let me just skip that video. There we go. So thank you very much, everyone. There's a wee video there at the end, but we don't need to watch that one. So look, I hope that was really good today. I hope you got a lot from that in terms of thinking about your motivators and motivating those around you and getting everybody to go on the same journey together. So I will stop recording and I will see you all next